when you work on drawing the human face, you need to focus on getting proportions correct. And there are some proportions of the human face that are the same for all of us. So I'm going to go over them and I'll show you what they look like on some photographs. So basically, the human head shape is an egg shape with the narrower part of the egg, you know how an egg's narrower at one end, where the chin is. The neck comes down and is almost as wide as the face. So here you can see the neck. The eyes are one eye width apart, and you can put almost another eye on the side. The edges of the mouth line up with the iris or the pupil of your eye, more the iris, the inner edge of the iris. Your eyebrows are one eye height above, halfway between, the eyes are halfway between the chin and the top of the head. The tip of the nose is halfway between the eyes and the chin, and the middle of the mouth is halfway between the tip of the nose and the chin. So that's a lot of stuff, and I will post this photo on Schoology, but let me show you this for real with my friend here, George Clooney. So the human head, I'm going to draw on George Clooney here, is loosely an egg shape. And notice how the egg is narrow. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe I need a darker marker. So let's see if you can see this. The narrower part of the egg is down there by the chin. Okay, the eyes. They are halfway between here and here, the halfway point. So I'm going to find the halfway point, and that's where the eyes are. So this is a halfway point. There you go, George. Okay, halfway between the eyes and the chin is the tip of the nose. Halfway between the tip of the nose and the chin is the mouth. People really struggle with this because they think, oh, their eyes are up here, but they're not. You have forehead, you have hair, that's all adding some height to this. So halfway. Now, to get the eyes the right size, this distance equals this distance equals that distance. And he's slightly turned, so there's a little less space there and a little more space there, but you can put about a half to a full eye length on either side. Now, there are some differences for people. Now, that's what makes us look unique, is this height from the top and bottom of his eye should equal up to his eyebrow. His eyebrows are a little lower than normal. Not a lot, but a little bit. So those are some of the things that make us look unique. The edges of the mouth line up with, so here I can show you this, pupil, the inner part of the iris, something like that. This one, because of his head being turned slightly, it's a little different. And notice how his neck is almost as wide as his face. And then to get the ears right, the top of the ear lines up with the eyebrow. The bottom of the ear lines up with the nose. So here's top and bottom of ear, lines up with eyebrow and tip of nose. So those things, with the slight differences, like his eyebrows are a little bit lower, his ears just a little bit higher than normal, are the same for all of us. So, and then you have things like when you get to doing hair, there's the hairline that comes across your forehead. There's the hairline that goes up like the silhouette of your head. And then of course there's things like shirts and, you know, shoulders. But those are the basic proportions of the human face. Now, got my other friend here, Beyonce. And you'll notice in this photo, she is slightly turned away from us. This is called three-quarter, a three-quarter portrait or a three-quarter profile. So rather than have the nose right in the middle, and that's another thing I should have pointed out, forward facing, the nose is pretty much in the middle. Rather than have that, sometimes you want to deal with a little more interesting pose. And notice how her nose is a little bit, her head's turned. So some of the things are still true, like her head is still this egg shape, and notice how the narrower part of the egg is where her chin is. Her neck is still almost as wide as her face. Now her hand's hiding that part of her neck. Her eyes are still, so halfway between the chin and the top of her head are her eyes. So they are right there at that halfway point. Her halfway between her eyes and her chin is the tip of the nose. Halfway between the tip of the nose and the chin is her mouth. Now getting the eyes. Now this gets tricky because you'll notice here, here's an eye, I'm going to choose a different color. That length. Now notice how much, we can fit a whole nother eye length here, and we can fit another eye length here, but this eye is turned away from us. And notice how it's a slightly different shape, and there's no space on the side. That's because of her head being turned. And then this eye height, now hers is the same as from here to her eyebrow. And corner of her mouth lines up kind of loosely with the edge of her iris of her eye. This one also, but it's a little crowded. And notice how this affects the shape of her cheek over here. And it's just a little more interesting. This is challenging because it looks different than that. Whereas on George Clooney here, these look very much the same because he's forward facing. So her ear. Top of the ear lines up with the eyebrow, bottom of the ear lines up with the bottom of the nose. So if you want a challenge, then choose a pose where the person's slightly turned away from you and you get this variation on one side of the face. And she has her shoulders. Now notice sometimes people draw with these skinny little necks and these narrow shoulders. Neck here, and then the shoulders go off here, and usually, and we can see this better on this picture rather than Mr. Clooney over there, head width equals the distance, so this distance equals this distance to her shoulder equals this distance to her other shoulder. So if you get really comfortable with facial proportions, then it becomes easier to make the person look in the realm of human. And then beyond that, you start thinking about the differences in pose, the differences in like eyebrows and ears and slight shape of the mouth. Like you can see, Beyonce's upper lip is a lot more full than George Clooney's upper lip. Actually, so is her lower lip. Their noses are somewhat similar. She different hairdo, obviously, and to draw her hairdo, we would get this line that goes, your hairline goes from your ear across and over, and then she has it pulled back into a ponytail, but we do see this ponytail or whatever she's got going because her head's slightly turned. And just sometimes I get asked, how do you draw a ponytail if you're forward facing? Well, you know, for all we know, George Clooney has a ponytail. We can't see it because it would be behind his head. I'm guessing he doesn't because his hair looks short. So that is the basic proportions of the human face, brought to you by George Clooney and Beyonce.